Okay, so hi, welcome everyone to this meeting tonight at Polmaise Community Council that we're doing for you guys. Just to clarify a few points, I'm Andrew Hughes. I'm the PR and Media Manager for Intelligent Land Investments Group. We also have Greg Templeton on the call today, and Simon Monroe, our technical advisor as well. So I can see there's a few people have joined in. I've joined the chat. Now that chat feature there is open. So if anyone's wanting to, if anyone's got any questions, please just put them in the chat as we go through, and we'll answer them either at the end of the presentation or as we go through, whatever seems most appropriate. Yeah. So what we're doing today is just obviously we've done a consultation back last year. Which Greg can maybe tell you a little bit about. Greg?
Yeah, hi. So as part of the planning process for a major application, applicants consult with the public through public consultation events. And usually in times before COVID, we would hire a local hall and we would notify the local community councils, and we put an advert in the local paper to say that we're holding an event. People would come along. We would have presentation boards, and people could ask us questions. But because of COVID, the Scottish Government are encouraging people instead to move these events online. So we consulted with Stirling Council, explained how we intended to conduct the public consultation. We arranged for the date of the public consultation to be held online. Stirling Council agreed that, and we advertised in a local paper and contacted two local community councils. We then held the event. A couple of people gave us some feedback at the event and filled out the PAN form and got in touch with us, and we responded to some questions from that event. Then that was packaged up in a report, a PAN report that goes to the planning department when we submit our application, to explain what events we did and to give to sort of summarise the feedback that we received. But I'm conscious that some people feel that they've missed or they weren't aware, they didn't see it in the local paper, the community council hadn't passed it on, or hadn't seen the email, and so we've decided to hold this additional event tonight. Now this isn't part of the statutory obligation on applicants to hold a public event, but we felt that as people felt they had missed out, this would be a good opportunity to introduce the project to them and to answer directly any questions that you may have. And if I could just also let people know how they could get in touch with us just now. So through the website that you're watching us on, there should be a chat box which is visible to you on the right hand side of the screen. There's a note there from me just to introduce you here tonight. You can enter, you can type into that chat box and we'll be able to see it. Everyone can see what you've written, and we'll try and answer any specific questions that you've got. But tonight, Andrew's going to run through the presentation. It's slightly different from the presentation that we gave before planning, but we're going to run through the presentation to introduce the project to you. And hopefully you'll get in touch with some questions. If not, I can summarise some of the questions, some of the issues that have been raised, and some of the types of questions that we usually get asked, and hopefully that will answer any questions that you've got. So, Andrew, if you want to start going through the slides.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Greg. That's quite clear now. So I'll just put it on full screen because some of the pictures will show up a lot better that way. So, second. Yeah, so this, as Greg mentioned, this kind of runs through, it tells you a little bit about Intelligent Land Investments Group, why we're involved in energy storage, why we're involved in energy storage at this exact location, the wider kind of benefits for that, and then we'll run through the kind of actual planning drawings, give you a rundown of what the project's going to look like. So, yeah. So what is the project? So in essence, what we're proposing is a 49.9 megawatt energy storage facility. Oh, sorry, energy storage facility, and it's made up of basically storage containers that are filled with batteries. So I don't know if anyone's seen inside a data center, but if you're if you had a look in one of these inside these storage containers, basically have racks and racks of smaller battery components that make up the full kind of battery unit, battery container, and there's 54 of those, I believe, on the site. So we've got the battery containers. We've got some as an access track, a short access track into it. There's a meter building, fencing, and there's a good deal of thought went into the landscaping for the project as well, and the kind of trees that we're going to plant that over time will come to screen the project. So projects like this, what they do in the most basic term is we store excess energy from the grid. Usually that's renewable energy. So if you probably all drove by wind farms and you see some of the wind turbines are going and some of them aren't. And the reason for that is that that power from those other turbines isn't needed. So instead of having to switch off wind turbines or switch off turbines, what we can do is we can store that excess power, we can produce that electricity, and we can store that power for when it is needed. So this is one of many projects that we have across Scotland that would do this all across the whole of Scotland. And that power gets put back into the grid when it is required. And it helps balance supply and demand for the grid in effect. So, but I'll go into that in a wee bit more detail in a minute. So, who are Intelligent Land Investments Group? So, we're an energy storage development company based in Hamilton in Lanarkshire. The energy storage side of things started in 2017. With our purpose was to bring 2 gigawatts of energy storage to Scotland. The majority of that we're doing through some larger pump storage hydro schemes that we have. We've got one at the moment up at Loch Ness, Red John, that's currently going through planning, and we should have a result on that, decision on that shortly. And we've got another 2 of those, plus we have a number of other battery storage projects as well across Scotland. So we realised quite early on, from around about 2010, we were involved in renewable energy, where we were doing projects, feed-in tariff projects, and some larger scale wind farms. And we quickly realised that the next sort of thing that was going to be required after we had put all the renewable energy into the system was we were going to need energy storage on a large scale. And that's when we started looking at these kind of energy storage projects. Now, Scotland's got, why is it needed? So why we need projects like this? Scotland has a target of net zero by 2045. And that's one of the most ambitious targets in the world. And to do that, we're going to shift we're moving from fossil fuel generators to renewable energy. But the age-old problem that we have with renewable energy is that it's intermittent. It means it only works when the wind blows, when the sun shines, and we can't always meet demand. It doesn't always meet up with demand. Now, traditionally, what we've done at those kind of points where we don't have enough renewable energy on the system is we turn up the coal or the gas or the nuclear to make up the difference. But what's happening recently, and it's going to be going forward, is these kind of fossil fuel generators are going offline, which means we're more and more dependent on intermittent renewable energy. And that's when energy storage really comes into its own. So if we're going to deploy more renewable energy at scale, we're going to need a lot more energy storage on the grid network. And Ofgem have estimated that we could need up to 37 gigawatts of energy storage by 2050. So we're currently sitting at around 4.5 gigawatts of energy storage, so we've got a long way to go to get there. And the Scottish Government as well are kind of broadly supportive of new energy storage projects like this. Why do we need it in this location? So the reason that we're at the project at Bolfornought farm is that we're close to the Stirling grid supply point. And basically, a grid supply point is a major hub for the grid network. It's where transmission power comes in pylons, gets broken down from high voltages into smaller voltages, and then out to smaller substations, and eventually out to your homes and to your businesses. So it's a kind of major kind of hub for grid. So it's a perfect point for us to add in that kind of level of energy storage. Now, the problem that we have is there's lots of these grid supply points all across Scotland, but not all of them have the availability to take the kind of power that we're proposing the 49.9 megawatts. But luckily, at Stirling grid supply point, there is capacity there to take that energy storage. So that's why we're in the location that we are. So this gives you this kind of plan. Everyone will know what this, I'm sure. The red line boundary that's the kind of planning boundary. So that's the kind of the wider scale of what the project's footprint the project's going to be in. So it's about 1 kilometre from Cambus-Kenneth to the northwest, about 1.5 kilometres from Fallen to the southeast. They're the closest towns, and the nearest kind of residential properties are Upper Taylorton and Stuart Hall, around about 400 metres away. So we're quite just under half a kilometre away from any kind of properties. And again, the grid supply point is in the industrial estate right beside it. So the next few slides give you an idea of the layout, or what the proposed layout is. So I know that it's a little bit kind of faded there, but if you can make out those rectangles where the cursor is, those are the energy storage units that I mentioned. So there's 54 of those in total, with an access track coming in from the road down the middle of those. We also have we're going to be doing a good deal of landscaping as well, which the next slide will talk about. But that'll be kind of native broadleaf trees and shrubs that over time, obviously they don't come fully grown. Over time they'll come to screen the project entirely. There's a 3-metre wooden fence that is round the project in the kind of pink line you can see there. And there's a small substation enclosure at just here, this rectangle there. And outside of the whole project, there's a wire stock fence as well. So that's kind of the layout from a kind of planning point of view. Show this as well. So this gives you an idea of what the energy storage units consist of. So we've got, they are basically shipping containers that have been repurposed to contain batteries. So they're 13 meters by 2.5 meters by 2.6 meters high, and they contain the technology that we're using is solid state lithium batteries, as those are used in probably 80 to 90% of all other energy storage projects across the UK and worldwide. So we're using the sort of proven technology. So this gives you an idea of the fencing that we're proposing. So that's a 3-meter high wooden fence, and there's going to be some security cameras to keep the project safe. And outside of that, there's a 1.2 meter high wire stock fence as well. So that's what the fence looks like. But there's also on the outside of that, we're going to have this landscaping plan that our technical advisor Simon will just run through. Simon, if you want to kind of explain the landscaping plan that we have.
Yes, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, so around the compound, there's the solid wooden fence, which is, as Andrew said, 3 meters high. Now that's higher than any of the equipment inside the compound, other than the cameras that are a little higher. And so, effectively, from ground level outside the fence, you won't be able to see the equipment within. Now, but around the outside of the wooden fence, we're proposing a landscape bund, which is just a raised area of earth, 1.4 meters high, and then there would be a new planting of trees on the top of that and on the slope of that, and then outside of that, around the outside as well. But quite a substantial area of new planting, about 2,700 native trees would go in around the site to landscape the site.
That's great. Thanks, Simon. Thanks for that. So there's quite a bit of thought went into what the project's going to look like from the surrounding area. And Simon was saying, the trees on the landscape bund will, on top of that, would be quite almost screening the whole project from the get-go, if I'm right, Simon, is that correct?
Well, obviously the trees, they go in and there'll be a certain size, and over time those will establish. But the bunding arrangement certainly has been used in other places, and it's quite effective and quite quickly screening the site.
Yeah. Right.
So you would expect within a few years that you're generally looking at the trees rather than the site within. And even at the start, a good part of the wooden fence will be screened by the bund itself, even just from the grass and vegetation there. And what you are seeing of that for the most part is a wooden fence.
Right, thanks, Simon. Thanks for clearing that up. Okay, so yeah, we've also, as part of the project, there's also a small substation building inside the compound, and that's basically it contains all the equipment that we need to get the power from the batteries to the grid and from the grid back to the batteries again. That's a GRP building, 10 meters by 6 meters by 3.2 meters high, with a colour that would be agreed with the council. So I think there is some questions came up already, Greg. Am I right? I'm kind of trying to do two things at once here. See what's coming in.
I'll keep an eye on the questions, Andy.
Yeah. So that's a kind of brief run through of what we're proposing, why we're doing energy storage at all, why we're doing it in this location, and what the project's going to look like. So yeah, that's what we've got to present, and this is the time now. If anyone's got any questions, or if any questions are there, we can hopefully clarify and answer them.
Yep, Andy, so there have been a couple of questions. I've given a brief response to those questions, but I can suggest that we just give a more full answer to these.
Yeah.
So someone has asked, how many battery storage projects do we have that are live? I've said that we have 2 battery storage projects under construction now, both of which are in Fife. One's at a very early stage of construction, one's a little more advanced. So we've got 2 at construction. We don't have any operating projects at the moment. Yeah,
I think that's more down to the time that it takes to go through planning, and because we're connecting so much power, there's a delay on when you can actually get connected to the grid in most cases, which is a number of years. So these are projects some of these projects, the ones that are coming through now, are ones that we started in 2018, and that's just the timescales that we have from the grid operators, SSE and Scottish Power. So those are the kind of timescales that we have to connect the projects to the grid, or otherwise they would have been up and running a lot sooner.
Yes, so it's probably worth saying, Andy, that this project, the connection date for the grid is likely to be in a couple of years' time.
Yeah.
We try and bring that in as much as we can, and once the projects are consented, and whether it's Scottish Power or SSE know that the work's going ahead, then sometimes that can come in a little. But it will be a long time from the start date of just now. It's got to go through the planning process and be properly considered there. And then there's a period of sort of finalising the engineering elements of the project, and then there's the sort of construction period, the lead-in time, and the grid connection. So these can take a long time. But one thing that we could do, and we've been asked to do for another consent that we have, is to try and start the landscaping as quickly as possible. in advance of those works, to the extent that it can be done, to allow that landscaping to bed in as much as possible, so that by the time the construction starts, that landscaping is already taken hold. The next question we have is, what other sites have we considered in the Stirling area?
Yep.
So I'll have a short answer on that, Andy, and you can maybe
yeah,
come in there. But so essentially, what we always try to do is get as close as possible, physically as close as possible to the grid connection point. And throughout Scotland, there is available grid to allow these projects to go ahead, but only at a finite number of substations and points throughout the country. So we try to identify these and get as physically as close as possible. Now, it's not ideally for us, we would just be right next door on the other side of the fence, but unfortunately that's not always possible for various reasons, and we have to try and speak to landowners and get agreement to get as close as we can. And in this instance, this is as close as we could get to the substation that's there, which is over at the industrial estate. So, but we also try and take into consideration sort of local conditions, and try and site the project appropriately, taking into consideration various elements such as flooding and transport and landscape and ecology, and we try and site them appropriately. So that's what's dictated where we could put it here. Now, I know that some of the objections have suggested, well, would this not be better put in the old army site? Unfortunately, we don't have any rights over that. We're not able to put a project in that area, and we're limited on what we could do by the agreements that we're able to get. And so hopefully that sort of answers that question. I don't know if Simon or Andy want to add to that at all.
No, I think that's it, Simon. That's really it, Greg. It's just we kind of work from the grid supply point to see where the available land is and who's amenable to letting us use their land to build a project like this. Yep. That's otherwise we would build every project right beside it, which we've done in a number of cases where that's been possible.
Yep. So someone is saying that they object to the project because it is close to the school, to two significant bodies of water, and the heritage site. They say that the fires present a significant risk. So I think we can go through each of these, but before I do, I just want to make the point that any objections that you want to make, you have to make to Stirling Council. I think we're going to give a note of this meeting to the planners at Stirling Council so that they know what was discussed. But any objections that you want to make, to have those considered by the planning officers and by the elected members, you have to make those objections and representations to the council. So you'll find that on the council's planning portal. You do a search for the site. You can search the project name, or we can put up we can give the planning reference number, which in fact I'll just type it into. I'll type it into the chat box just now, so that people can go to that if they want. Just so you know that the purpose of tonight's event is we try and listen to your concerns, try and answer any questions that you've got, and if possible, if there's anything that we can do to the plan as it's in planning just now, to help tackle any of these concerns that people have got, then we will try and do that. We have already, and we might go into this shortly, we've already proposed some changes to the scheme based around the roads and sightlines, I believe, and the landscaping to improve that, an improvement on what was submitted originally. So hopefully you'll see that we're taking measures to listen to you, and we're trying to address all the issues that come up. I found that I can't speak and type a reference number at the same time, so I'm going to type that in just now. Andy, but maybe Simon, you could talk around some of the issues there: the proximity to the school, the bodies of water, fire risk, and its location within, close to the battlefield.
Certainly, yep. Okay, well, I'll just come in. Perhaps somebody had asked just in terms of other projects that are up and running. I think it's worth saying that there are many of these kind of projects up and running in Scotland and in the UK. I think there's about 1,000 megawatts of these projects operational at the moment. And that amount is increasing quite quickly at the moment. So it was worth saying that. In terms of the school, I think it's in relation to St Modens. So yeah, we're over I think 350 meters from the school. It's on the other side of the road embankment, with mature trees in between. So I don't think there's actually any visibility between the site and the school.
I think Simon, sorry, it may be from the other questions. I think it's more sort of, is there any health risk with its proximity to the school?
Yeah.
Possibly with a fire risk or.
Sure. Well, I mean, I don't think so. Is the answer to that? As I say, there are many of these projects up and running. They've been vetted, very careful. They're subject to obviously quite stringent checks and design risk assessments. So these projects will have a very high standard of safety. We do look for sites where there is a good setback from houses and schools, and I really think we have that here. It is hundreds of meters from the proposed site to the nearest houses and schools, for instance. So I really don't think that is a valid concern. In terms of the, and these are very fair points to raise. Obviously, this will be new technology for many people. In terms of the rivers and then the kind of batteries that are being proposed here, as Andrew said, would be lithium-ion batteries, essentially the same as used in mobile phones and laptop computers, and indeed increasingly in cars these days. It's a relatively safe form of battery. They're not subject to leakage, these batteries. The electrolyte in a lithium-ion battery is immobilized. So even if there's a problem or corrosion, what have you, it's something you might imagine that can't leak, it can't get into the water or onto the ground. That's something that's been looked at very carefully in relation to many other projects. So that's not a concern. So there's been no emissions from the site in operation.
And that's, sorry, Simon, to interrupt, but that's something that SEPA would take very seriously, isn't it? That they would, if there was a threat or a risk from these batteries, that's something that the Scottish Government would.
Well, that's right. I mean, when you hear the word battery and then battery storage, certainly that will flag in many people's minds the issues of battery pollution, and where people come from there is in terms of car batteries, lead acid batteries, which can leak and are an environmental risk But in terms of the particular technology that's proposed here, lithium-ion batteries, that's not a factor.
Thanks, Simon. There was a couple other points. So you've covered the river. So I think fire risk again was that was another.
Yes, I mean in terms of fire, so again it comes down to careful design and engineering of the projects. As you'll appreciate, there'll be a lot of value in a project like this, and the project very carefully designed to be safe, and the project that design will be checked by the project's insurers and indeed their engineers, and will meet all the latest safety standards at the time of construction. So again, these facilities have a very good track record. Safety is something that has to be taken obviously very serious, but it's something that can be managed, and I think these facilities can be entirely safe.
Okay. Now I'm gonna just speed up slightly because I noticed we've got about half an hour left, and there are actually quite a lot of questions. So if you don't mind, Simon, I'm going to just quick fire these at you, if that's okay. So the next question is how do we get the electricity to and from the GSP?
So there would be a new buried cable between the site and the grid substation, the existing substation, so a below ground cable.
Entirely below ground, yep. So someone's saying, having read the various documents relating to this development, the environmental health report from Stirling Council says that the noise values quoted here are unrelated to what's being proposed. We are undertaking additional work on noise in response to environmental health's comments that they've raised today. We're going to be doing some background noise assessments, but I don't know, Simon, do you have a response to that specific point?
Yes, there were some queries from environmental health, and we'll respond to that with some clarifications, and we hope to we'll submit that fairly soon. I would say that on noise, obviously the assessments need to be done careful. We're not talking about a very noisy development here. I mean, we're reasonably close to quite a busy road at the site, and the sort of noise levels associated with the road would, I think, be higher than this development, just to get things into perspective there.
Okay, thanks for that, Simon. So someone's asked, we've chosen a site that's designated as Greenbelt in the local development plan. So not for infrastructure projects. I don't know if there's anything you can say on that.
Well, it's up to council to assess the application carefully against the planning policies. I mean, my understanding is that the green belt is to prevent the growth of urban areas and coalescence of urban areas. That's not what's being proposed here. It's a specific project to allow energy storage to facilitate greater renewable energy and decarbonisation of the electricity grid. And it's a temporary consent that's being sought for the project, so the land would be quite capable of being restored and put back to how it is just now at the end of that period.
Yeah, I think I'm right in saying as well that most of our energy storage projects are in sort of rural locations and greenbelt. But you're right that the planners will want to assess it against the relevant policies. Someone's just commenting here, so I'll just read these out, is that lithium is a dirty, extremely dirty chemical. If it leaks, it will destroy the local environment. And it talks about the diverse biodiversity that's there. I think we've already covered that, so that might have been before your initial question there. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Well, just to say that we wouldn't expect there to be any contamination at the site itself. The batteries are sealed, and the lithium within that is immobilized in any event, and the batteries will be within these containers. And at the end of the life of the project, all of that would be taken away. And I would expect the site to be, there wouldn't be any contamination at that stage.
Okay. Some of the next comment I think has been cut off, but I think what they're saying is that the proposed or the road isn't designed for the projected vehicle movements for during construction. Now, obviously, once the projects are up and running, there's very few vehicle movements, but during construction, when they're constructing it, or they're doing the groundworks, putting in the bund, putting up the fence, and delivering and installing the batteries, there will be vehicle movements. I don't know if there's anything you can say at this stage for that, Simon.
Well, yep. In terms of the public road at the roundabout, obviously that's a high capacity distributor road, and certainly the amount of traffic associated with this development won't be significant in terms of traffic there. On the private road, the farm road, if you like, into the site, it clearly is necessary to bring traffic in there in order to construct the site. As Greg says, in use, the facility would be expected to have very low levels of traffic, maintenance now and again, but not to any great level. So it would really boil down to the construction period. Now, the advantage of the construction period is that there would be a contractor in charge of that, and that can be planned and managed carefully, and residents involved in that in terms of having a contact, and programs in terms of what's going on with that, and certainly on other similar projects that would help to ensure there's to avoid issues on that road. And I think with management that can be a fairly minor issue.
Yeah, or certainly an issue that can be planned and managed. The next question is, do we get agreement from SSE or Scottish Power to agree connection to the grid prior to commencing build? We do. We get a grid connection offer very early in the project. I think we may already have it actually for this project. We have to, obviously it has to connect to the grid, so we have to be sure that not only that there's grid available, that there's grid capacity available, and so we do that fairly early on in the project. And as we mentioned earlier, because of the lead-in times and the connection dates, that has to be done quite early on. So we will have that agreement in place. The next question is more of a comment. The landscaping is not the only problem. People are concerned about the whole local environmental impact. So part of tonight is hopefully to show that we are conscious of the impact locally, or the concerns over the impact locally of the project. We do everything we can to keep the impacts down. I think the impact predominantly with these projects is very low noise. So the impact often is visual impact, and we take all the steps that we can to reduce that visual impact down, and with the measures that Simon's already discussed, with the landscaping, landscape bund, the screening around the site. So we are conscious of these, and we'll our submission to planning it looks at these, and if there's any questions from consultees or from the local authority, then we'll respond to those, and sometimes we do additional work once the plan application's gone in, and additional surveys, which is exactly what we're doing with noise, and that's just to satisfy the decision makers that the technical constraints and the technical considerations have all been taken on board and are acceptable, and fall within acceptable levels. So I hope that responds. That's satisfactory to the people who made that comment. There's another question asking how many landowners have been approached to get closer to the substation. We have dedicated land agents that go out and speak. So once we identify a site, we do as much as we can sort of from desktop, and then we, or before COVID anyway, we went out and our land agents would speak to the people immediately around the substations, and then work our way out until we got someone that was interested in close by. So I'm not sure of exactly how many landowners that we spoke to in this instance, but that's the process that we follow. So we start immediately at the substations and we work our way out. There's obviously a limit to eventually you're just too far away from the substation and the grid connection costs would be too great. But that's the approach that we take in dealing with landowners. Just said on screen there isn't an available option next door, but there's an empty MOD site next door to this recently upgraded substation. So I think I did address that earlier in the presentation. We don't have rights to the empty MOD site that's next door, so we can't put forward a project at that location, unfortunately. We can only put in an application where we've got where we have an agreement with the landowner. So unfortunately, we don't have any agreements or any rights over that MOD site. Will a transcript and recording be made available of this presentation? And by recording, I mean a full recording of your answers to the questions raised. Yes. This is being recorded, and the recording will be available. There won't be a transcript, but there is the recording will be available on this website, or we can send links to it to the community councils if they want.
Yeah, it's hosted on YouTube, so this link will stay live. So if you just come back to the same web addresses you have today, you just hit play, and basically this presentation will play from the beginning, or you can skip through it. So it'll be here.
Yeah, but I would say, if we still have people online, and the person who said this, if there's any particular part of the transcript that, or if there's any particular part of the presentation that we've covered already that you would like us to go over again, then we're still here and we're happy to do that for you. If you missed it, or you would just like to clarify any points that have been made. How will this affect the value of any properties in the vicinity of this? I think I have to say, I don't know, but we don't expect there to be any negative impact on the value of the properties in the area. Once this project is established, it will be well screened. It will have landscaping all around it, and these projects are becoming more and more common within Scotland. People will potentially recognise it for what it is. Won't have a huge impact, and so I wouldn't expect it to have any negative value on the properties. So I hope that answers that question. So the next, why are you considering using batteries using lithium? Talks about the supplies are only available from other countries. It seems to me that this project is unsupportable as a 25-year plan, and any alternative which is less toxic have just not been addressed. I think it possibly goes on to the next comment that says, being a local resident, we have been approached by other residents. We are worried that the effect this will have on the environment and the wildlife in the area. I can safely say none of us are very keen. And also, you have just said none of your sites are up and running yet. So, so not that far from it, how can you tell what the result will be? So I think possibly this question actually was typed 18 minutes ago. So I think Simon has possibly addressed this point by saying that there are lots of these projects up and running. It may be possible to share if people want to fill in the form that's at the bottom of this web page, or is it actually the form?
There isn't a form there, Greg. No,
okay.
There's not.
So if anyone is interested, if they want to send me an email address, and I'll put my email. In fact, Andrew's email address is on the screen at the moment.
Yep.
ah@ili-energy.com. If you put as the title Bolfornought Energy Storage Project, you can ask us any questions through that, but also we can send images of existing sites that are up and running, and hopefully that will give you an idea of what to expect. It can be hard, so I understand when we're dealing with members of the public and they look at drawings, the drawings can look a little flat, sort of engineering drawings. Often it's hard to tell from a plan. People want to know where their house is in relation to the project. It can be difficult to get an understanding of what the project will look like once it's constructed. So hopefully by sharing an image or two of existing projects, that can help people understand what they're likely to see. So people are saying they're not overly concerned about visibility, but they are concerned about fire risk. Again, this was 18 minutes ago, so hopefully we've responded to this. People saying that they do feel unsafe, which again, that's something that I can understand if it's something that you're not familiar with, that you'd feel that way, but hopefully Simon has answered that. The development proposed is 49.99, which is 0.01 megawatts below the size that triggers a Section 36 EIA development across Scotland. How do we stop the megawatts breaching 49.99? Simon, I think that's a sort of technical point there, just to, I don't know if you can address that.
Yes, well, that's the size that's proposed here. In terms of the way that the consenting regime works in the country, is that that's the maximum size that is consentable by Stirling Council. Anything above that would go to directly to the Scottish Government for a decision. So one way of looking at it would be, well, that makes for a local decision on this project. In terms of environmental impact assessment, that's slightly different. Actually, it's a different determination, and these kinds of projects typically don't require environmental impact assessment, really, because the impacts are fairly modest. And so, yeah, I think those are the key reasons in terms of the site design. Each site has different characteristics. Here, the Carse is a flat area, and so the design that we've proposed here is flat design. If you quite, it's there's very little tall elements within the design, and the screening is in line with some of the other planting and trees that are in that area. So that should give a design that's coherent with what's already there. That's perhaps a long way coming round to that. This is a design on this scale that fits this particular site.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. So another question we have: are the batteries liquid cooled?
No, not usually, no.
Yeah. Someone's asking, where are the planning documents that show the underground cable? Can you sort of explain the consenting regime for the underground cables?
Underground cables it don't generally require planning consent.
Yep, the cables they tend to be laid by either Scottish Power or SSE under their statutory powers. So they would go, I believe they go along the road or along the verge of the road, and that's done by SSE as part of the works there. Someone's saying there are many research documents that suggest this development actually has a far greater environmental consequences, greater than well-managed existing technologies. And they're saying, why should we support this? So I think I'll just quickly touch on, so ILI have a couple of large scale hydro pump storage projects in Scotland, and these are projects of national significance. These are considered as national developments in Scotland. So a national development was, the Fourth Crossing was a national development, so that gives an idea of the scale of the projects. That gives certain things that the grid needs. It provides certain services to the grid. It can respond quite quickly. But battery storage projects are also required. We need a massive amount of storage in order to meet our CO2 targets, our emission reduction targets. We have to transition away from dirty coal and oil and towards renewable energy. And unfortunately, the sun isn't always shining and the wind isn't always blowing. And so you have to store that energy when it's being produced for use when it's needed. Battery storage projects of this type are able to respond very quickly within seconds and fractions of a second to small changes in the fluctuations in the grid that result from a cloud going over the sun or the wind dipping temporarily, these types of things. So these projects are just as important as the big projects that we're working on. And so that's why that's part of the mix of energy storage projects that we are working on at ILI. Now, I'm just conscious there are still another couple of questions. We've got about 5 minutes left, so try and go through them as quickly as I can. Noise levels overnight are very low. How can we mitigate the noise overnight? So I think that's possibly a reference to the fact that the road isn't as busy at night.
Yeah, well, the project will be assessed against the sort of worst case condition. So that'll consider both the daytime and the nighttime when it is quieter. It's worth saying that again, the noise levels that we're talking about are not particularly high. I don't think. The project, the design does include the for the solid friends right around the site. That does act to reduce noise levels and contain it within the site, and the bunding and planting will also help in that respect. But the levels, noise levels at night have been considered as part of the assessment.
Yeah, I think I'll also add that the Stirling Council Environmental Health Officer is very good, very competent, and has asked questions and ask for further information that we're going to bring forward. They won't recommend that the project go ahead unless they're satisfied that those noise levels, those strict noise levels, can be met. And then it's likely, and it's very common, that there'll be a noise condition attached to any consent that will control the level of noise. But I think, as Simon's pointed out, made a point a couple of times, that these aren't noisy projects. This isn't like a wind farm development or something of that nature. They're much very low levels of noise associated with these projects. But we can understand if people haven't seen a project like this before and they haven't been near one, that they don't know what to expect. But I just want to reassure people that that these issues are being covered as part of the planning process. So my screen just scrolled down there. I've lost my questions. If you can bear with me a wee sec. So people again asking about the MOD site. So I can't confirm, unfortunately, which landowners that we have approached, but we have used our best endeavours to get as close as possible to the GSP, and this site is as close as we were able to get it. Someone's asking about the road and damage to the road. I would invite this person to get in contact with ILI. It's something I think, just given the time, I think I'd like to take a bit of time to respond. So if you wouldn't mind emailing Andrew at ili-energy.com, and that's something that we can discuss with you sort of more fully. Sorry. So again, people just continue to be concerned about the safety of the lithium batteries. By our own admission, we're not experts, but they're just, I think, not asking a question here, but just reiterating their concerns. Can we share video recordings of our other sites so residents can get a feel of how noisy this development will be? I think what we can give is sort of equivalent noise levels. So sometimes you can give a noise level and say, well, this level of decibels is equivalent to being in a library, or this level of noise and decibels is equivalent to a quiet conversation or a bedroom or something like that. So I think we can give we can say what it is equivalent to, but I'm not sure a sound recording would do justice, because whatever you're listening to it on, you can turn the volume up and down. So I think that would be counterproductive, but we can certainly provide information, and that might well make up part of Simon's submission. Andrew and Simon, sorry, I'm rattling on. If there's anything you want to add, just please interrupt me, but I'm keen to get through the questions if I can.
No, yeah, keep going.
It seems like this project is aiming under the wire from a more robust investigation. I think this relates to some of the letters of objection said that people felt they hadn't been consulted properly. I don't know if this person was here at the start of the presentation, but I explained there that we followed the procedures for doing public consultations currently under COVID. Unfortunately, we can't hire a local hall like we might have done before, but we did, in consultation with Stirling Council, agree with them the approach that we would take to the public consultation. We held an online event very similar to this one, in which people could ask questions. We advertised that as we had agreed with Stirling Council in the local paper. We emailed to local community councils. Unfortunately, neither of them got back to us. Some people did come along and sign in to the presentation that we did before, but it was advertised. The application has been advertised in the local press. Once the application was submitted, that's live. People can contact the council about it. And we're also putting on this extra additional event where we're encouraging people to take part, and we're doing our best to answer the questions. So hopefully you'll see that we're not shying away from investigation, and we're happy to respond to any questions that people have, and respond to any queries from the planning department, and hopefully we'll give robust answers to the satisfaction of whatever consultee is addressing that part. So if it's noise, it will be environmental health, and other issues will be addressed by planning, and roads, we'll look at roads issues. So we're certainly not shying away. We're not trying to hide this application, and hopefully by this additional event that we're putting on, people will be a bit more comfortable with what we're proposing. You haven't answered the question on how to stop the site breaching 49.99 once in place.
I think I can probably jump in there, Greg, because
sure.
the grid offer that we're applying for with Scottish Power is for 49.9 megawatts of power. So that is the maximum minute power that we can add to the grid. These are monitored on a sort of second by second basis for fluctuations in the kind of grid. There's a number of different kind of services that battery storage can provide, and that's monitored on a kind of second by second basis, and the power can go to and from the batteries very quickly. But in effect, the ceiling on our connection is 49.9 megawatts with Scottish Power. So that is the maximum minute power we can put into the grid.
Yep. I've noticed that we're slightly over time, but I think we should keep going. There are still a couple of questions, so if people are still there, hopefully we'll get around to your question. So where will the water to the site be taken from? I don't know, Simon, could you answer that project?
Yeah, we propose a new pipe into the site from the public supply, which is up in the region of the main road there. I had seen a concern from a resident that there were sort of water pressure issues that might somehow affect that. I do not think that we will affect that. And indeed, it might be possible to upgrade the supply into the site in coordination with the project, if that was desired, and that will be bringing a new pipe in from the main road anyway. It's possibly an issue with the size of the existing pipe there serving the houses there.
Okay. Thanks, Simon. So someone else, this is a comment rather than a question, saying it's not just about how the project looks. People don't feel it's safe, and we say we're not experts. And as such, the people just feel really unsafe. So I'm not actually sure how best to address this point. The sites, there's lots of projects like these up and running, operating safely. There is an assessment or a consenting regime where projects are assessed. The project goes out to various consultees, statutory consultees that the council will consult for projects, and these projects are known to be safe, and I'm not really sure if there's anything at all that we could say to satisfy you if you have concerns. I'm not sure if maybe we could provide a sort of a data sheet or something along these lines to give some key information.
Could I come in there, Greg? Sure. Just to say that I say that there are many of these projects that are operational. That some projects have been picked over very carefully by many other local authorities and by communities, and in each case that I'm aware of, they've ultimately decided that, yep, actually these things are safe. That there's nothing to counter against that. For example, there was a site in England that was, I think, really picked over at quite some length at public inquiry, where there are there are sites with houses a lot closer than we are here, for instance, and those have been deemed to be safe. So I don't know if that answers the query fully, but that may offer some reassurance on that safety point.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. So I think this final question, and we're happy to take more questions if anyone is still there, but it's saying, now that lockdown is lifting, can there be a more accessible face-to-face public event for local community members who are older and have accessibility restrictions for using online consultations? So that's certainly a problem with online consultations, that people have to have a computer with audio to be able to participate. We've been guided by Scottish Government guidance up till now. Usually what we do is we do a public event. The guidance at the moment, I think, still does restrict us from holding such an event, and the guidance from the government is still for planning events such as this, that they should be held online to keep the spread of COVID down. And so that's got to be our first consideration in the first instance. But we are available, and that's hopefully something that a point that's come across today. Andrew's phone number is on the screen there. He also has his email address, and I'm just going to type in the office phone number. If you bear with me a sec. So the office phone number for us, you can ask for myself, Greg Templeton, or Andrew Hughes. And so if anyone has access to a phone, hopefully you can share this with anybody if you have anyone in mind, and we can chat through as best we can the issues that we've got. Now, we had Simon Monroe from Logan PM on today as technical advisor, because Simon has a well-rounded knowledge of the technical issues. So if you do phone, we may have to revert to Simon, or we may have to get back to you with specific technical questions, but we will do our best to answer anything. And if you email us, again, we'll do the same. So we are keen to respond to people's concerns if they still have them. Are you willing to give back to the community with money for local projects? Again, the short answer to this one is I don't know. It's not something that we have done for our other battery storage projects, and we're governed by a board. So this is a question that I think I would have to come back to you on, if that's okay. If planning is approved, how quickly will development commence, even if it's just the start of planting and bunding, etc.? So the building of the project, there's sort of two main factors for that are the date of the grid connection, which we mentioned. It can sometimes be, as long as maybe 2 years away for that, and there's a lead-in time for ordering the batteries as well. But we have in another consent that we have received consent for. We're encouraged to provide a planting scheme, agree a planting scheme with the local authority, to thereafter implement that scheme in full, and to implement that that planting as soon as practically possible. And I think that's the answer we would give there. We would commence the planting as soon as practically possible on the site. So we can't put planting in that will restrict the construction, but with these sites, most of the development is within the sort of the fenced wall, the fenced compound area. So it could be that there would be planting that we could undertake quickly and at the earliest point of the construction process, to allow that planting to bed in by the time the construction's finished. I think that's right. Saying that, Simon?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That's us come to the last of the questions. I hope we have answered some of the questions that you've got. I would encourage you, as I have done, to get in touch with us if there is still questions or queries that you have, if you would like a little bit of extra information. I think one of the ones here, someone is concerned about safety, and I don't want to belittle that at all. It's easy to, once you imagine something, it's easy to, if you've pictured it in your head, it's hard to let go of the image. And it's possible that we could give an extra sort of data sheet or something that could provide a bit of information that will hopefully satisfy that. I think most people are saying that they're not so much concerned of the visual impact of the proposals, but it's more safety concerns and the concern and sort of environmental concerns are the key issues. I think we've addressed those tonight, and I think we have addressed them in our planning submission. The planning application is still live. I believe people can still make comments to the local authority if they want to, and have those considered. Very often what happens is if a question comes in from a member of the public, we'll be asked to respond, and very often we just provide a response. So we keep an eye on that on the local planning portal, and if an issue is raised, then we'll give information to try and respond to that. I think I'll finish if there's no other questions, and it doesn't look like there's anything else coming through. I think I'll just finish by thanking everybody who's come on tonight. Thanks for taking the time to do that. Andy, who was it at the Community Council who we contacted to arrange this? Because I think we should thank them.
Yeah, I didn't actually get a name from from he or she. Or I approached them from my personal Facebook page, but I never got a name.
Okay.
But thanks for setting this up. Yeah, that was good of you to respond and give us an opportunity to kind of tell you a bit more about the project.
Yep. So unfortunately, one shortcoming of this method of communication is that we've not been sure who we've been responding to, so we can't say who asked each question, but hopefully we've responded to them. I've given out the office phone number, so you can contact myself or Andrew. Andrew's number is on the screen. His email address is on the screen. You can come back to this website and rewatch the presentation if you want. We'll keep this up, I think, probably until the application has been determined, so that people can access it. If you do know someone who wasn't able to come along tonight for whatever reason, you can pass on our phone number, and myself and Andrew will be happy to speak to them. So I think we can just finish there. Andrew, if you're in agreement.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you. Cheers. Bye.
Okay, and thanks, Simon. Thank you.
Okay.